Y'all know how I do mock here, cooking books, and serving informational meals. Now, I want to talk about the first law of thermodynamics, which is the conservation of energy. It cannot be destroyed nor created, just transformed. It can be changed, altered into other shapes and forms. So, the interesting thing about that is this. I spoke about my last video, I talked about fluorine, fluoridation of our water supply back in the 1940s, mid 1940s. And the justification of that is to prevent decay and tooth decay and cavities. However, studies according to the CDC have shown that that is not true. Studies as recent as 2011, the state of Kentucky has the most toothlessness, the most tooth decay and or cavities, and they have fluoridated water. So it shows that, well, if the water is fluoridated, how come there's so much tooth decay and people teeth are falling out in Kentucky? Clearly, that doesn't add up. So, but be that as that may be, what I want to discuss is the negative effects. I told you fluorine is extremely toxic. In its truest form, it is a derivative of fluorspar. Fluorspar is an acid used to distill, to what is it used for? Fluorspar is used to refine metals, right? It refine metals, and it also dissolves glass, right? Fluorspar, which is an acid used to refine metals and dissolve glass. So, fluorine is the birth child or the offspring of fluorspar. So this is where it comes from. It's also used with other chemicals for nuclear fuel, fluorine. And this is what's in our water supply as well as in our toothpaste, right? So, and I mentioned that we take showers, we bathe, we cook, I mentioned it's a cumulative toxin because we accumulate fluorine in our body over the years, right? And it also calcifies. Studies show that it calcifies the pineal gland, which is a very, very important part of the brain that's responsible for the secretion of DMT, dimethyltryptamine, and also it's considered, if you are Egyptologist or you study Egyptology, you'll learn that that's a very central part of their philosophy, knowledge, and or teachings. That's the window to the other dimension, the your connection to their God, to God. So it's very, fluorine has very negative consequences. And as I mentioned before, it is the most highly electronegative element of the elements on the periodic table. Not only is it the most highly electronegative, it is also the most reactive of all the elements. It is extremely combustible when coming in contact with other elements. And again, this is what's in our water. But what I want to say is, so what does this mean, right? It's inescapable, unavoidable, and there's no way around it, right? Because it's in our, again, it's been such a long-standing practice that we all are victims of it. But do not dismay, right? Because there's hope, right? I was talking to my lady the other day. I said, so what do we do, right? There's no, what do we stop drinking water? Well, we can modify, right? You could drink alkaline. Alkaline water is water that has alkaline is a substance that's called alky, and it neutralizes acids, right? So you can get water that has what's called alkaline, and if it's alkaline, that means it has alkalinity. If it's alkalinity, that means it has a pH of more than 7. A pH is a potential hydrogen, which is a measurement of the amount of acid or alkaline or alky that's in a solvent, not a solute, right? In a solvent, which would be, in this case, would be water. So you have a measurement of the pH is the measurement of the amount of whether of alkaline or acid that's in the water. If it's over 7, that means it's more alky, which is the neutralization of acid. So it's actually good. So you want to get water that's actually with a pH that's over 7. So that means there's more alky, which is a base substance that actually neutralizes the acids. So that's one thing. But let's be practical. Many people don't have the resources, the financial resources to afford drinking the expensive brands of water. So most people are settling for tap. Boiling water doesn't help, because when you boil the water, the interesting thing is that fluorine has a very different reaction. When it's boiled, it's actually concentrated, right? So you actually concentrate it more by boiling it. You can boil water to get rid of other things, but unfortunately with fluorine, they say, based off my research and studies anyway, it says that it doesn't really work. It just kind of like consolidates it. But be that as that may be, again, so what's the answer, right? Like, what do we do? Or do we just throw our hands up and be victims of be victims of this? No. Here's what thermodynamics is the answer. What I mean by that is the first law of thermodynamics, which is again, energy cannot be destroyed nor created. It's a conservation of energy. It can only be transformed, transmuted. It can be changed, adapted to different forms, etc. So the interesting thing is then, okay, so I mentioned fluorine is highly electronegative. It has the highest electronegative charge out there, meaning it attracts the most electrons, the most negative energy. But fluorine, in essence, is a form of energy. Yeah, it is. It's a form of energy, right? If you study it. So then the answer to it then is, again, not to dismay or to give up, but to understand that fluorine, because it's highly electronegative, that means it attracts the most electrons towards itself. And because fluorine is imbibed within our bodies, it's inculcated within our bodies, saturated, within our bodies, it's inculcated and imbibed within our system. So we're attracting a lot of the electronic forces, the electrons that are out there naturally, routinely, subconsciously, unconsciously, whatever. You can be sleeping, you can be up, it doesn't matter. You don't have to think about it or try. This is a natural occurrence. And according to the laws of physics and the various biochemists and science, so on and so forth. But what you can do is, like I said, study the first law. Energy can be manipulated. So what you can do is through rigorous, now this is not an easy task, through rigorous and disciplinary meditation, you can modify that energy.